That's great. Rhonda, could I invite you?
Sure, love to. I'd just like to invite us to close our eyes and to be still enough to close all the doors of everything else that our minds are in that are not in this room, and to bring ourselves presently here. So let's just do that for 1 minute, please. One big breath in, and that breath out. Thank you. One more. And out. And last breath, breathe in. Breathe out. And open your eyes. Divine grace, we ask for you today to help us to understand the matters that are before us today inside our agenda. May we do that which is expected of us to acquit properly in behalf of our region. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rhonda. Yes, that's what I always like about those openings. It's a good advice to centre on the work. Thank you to the team. Probably a reasonably brief set of papers, but a good set. And I particularly would like us to have a wee focus, if I could already hinted this, Daniel, around our quarterly risk report, particularly risk appetite. It's tremendous to see that there. We will have Stuart, our audit partner, joining us online for a couple of items, and I think we have probably shared or will share an additional item from Stuart when we get to him. And apart from that, it seems to be all good to go. I think we might as Aubrey. I think you've said she's actually in Hawaii, and I don't blame her if she doesn't want to zoom in for a meeting in Gizzy. It sounds like a good place to be. It might be being slightly cruel warmer than here. So look, I'm going to move that we claim an apology from Aubrey. Do I have a second? Thank you, Riet. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, it's carried. Thank you. Are there any matters of your interest that you need to note for the meeting today?
I have a question. Why is the paper in public excluded?
The safe
paper that we got.
I'm having that debate with Debbie. I wonder if you've got any sense with that advice.
Yeah, so the reason so it's an internal audit that we undertook operationally to fine-tune our practices. The nature of the discussion might lead to a place where we are discussing more confidential things. Cool. So to err on the side of caution, we've done that. Additionally, we don't, some of the stuff is an improvement cycle, and what we don't want is it to be used potentially if there's anything that can happen in the future. In a WorkSafe investigation, we don't want this to be circulating at that time, but we did discuss that we, the nature of the outcome, we will put the recommendations into the public.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to add to that as well. The specific ground that we've used is around the obligation of confidence, and the main reason we would use that ground is to not prevent like audits in the future from free and frank participation by those who participated in it. So sometimes this provision will be used to ensure the sanctity of the process in the future. If we had it in the public environment and things didn't go well, you might find that people won't participate in a free and frank manner going forward. So part of the obligation that we have around confidence is really to those that participated in a free and frank way to bring us to this result. So we want to maintain the sanctity of that process because we intend to do like audits in the future as well.
Thanks, James. Actually, I'm quite strongly persuaded by that argument that actually there are a number of times we get these sorts of reviews, and I take your point, it's internal. We do rely on the open and frank participation of staff, and I would think it important that staff and actually I presume contractors and everybody that was involved in this investigation know that it was done and that we have heard the lessons out of it, and indeed I would presume, James, the strategy, etc. will be published and public so that they know that there's been a response to
So the intention is once we've had this meeting, this is the first exposure in the governance environment, that the strategy and the plan will then be reported on in public environment through David's report as period of this committee. So that's the intention.
Thank
And
you.
I make an assumption that it's recognised as a result of having gone through the self-assessment or the assessment process.
Correct.
Debbie, you both raised that with me this morning. Are you happy with that?
I'm happy. I'm convinced. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that we should always try and do everything that we can and open, so that's great. Are there any matters? Oh no, we've got the minutes of our last meeting. Yeah, the last time was in this room. 3 Bob should be saying.
Time flies. Time flies when you're having fun, Bruce.
When was our last meeting, Pauline?
I don't know whether you got to that last one. Did you?
Oh, okay, right. Anyway, sorry, my mistake. Anyway, look, let's go. It's quite right. Through December, we've got the minutes from that. I'm going to move from the chair. We take them as true and correct. I've seconded. Yep. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate that. Is there any matters of accuracy, completeness you need to note? None. Say aye.
Aye.
Against is carried. We have the governance work plan on page 9 of our agenda. Anything that we need to know around this one at all? I think we're pretty much following the plan, which is good. Pauline, is there anything that we should note as far as this is concerned?
No, pretty much just that is part of the year, which is starting to set us up for the audit plan and just the standard reports thereafter, but no, nothing else in addition to that.
Okay, well, I think we can take that as received. I don't presume we need to pass a resolution on that. Haven't been informed of any leaves of absence. Are there any acknowledgements or tributes we should note today? Look your way on this one, Rhea. Is anything we should acknowledge or note at this stage?
Not that I'm aware. I think you're all good.
Public input petitions. I don't have any extraordinary business. We have none. I've got no motions. Adjourn business, which means then we can get into the reports. Now, Stuart. Stuart, are you on the line, Stuart? You are. Stuart, can you speak to us?
Yes. Yes. Good morning, everybody.
Great, Stuart. Welcome. Great to catch up with you for the second time in 24 hours. That's good. Pauline.
And if I could take the opportunity, I have Albert, JP, we call him, JP, who's my audit manager, also attending the meeting virtually, just so to get a feel for the room, shall we say, as part of the audit process.
That's a scary thing, John Paul. Welcome to the meeting as well. It's great to have both of you folk here. Stuart, before I ask you to talk to your paper, I just wondered, Pauline, is there anything that you folk would like to say in terms of introducing the paper, please?
Probably it's taken as much as proposals, the order of audits that that EY does with us with and report for the next 3 years. I would say that it's been tabled today. Stuart did a marvellous job of hurrying up in terms of being able to facilitate it with the OIG getting it to us. Today, I think it was 8:20 that it landed in our email boxes. But pretty much it's standard that the process is going on from what we had for the last financial years, and it's actually pretty much very similar to that for the next 3 years thereafter. But I will leave it at that. And I'm sure if there's anything with Stuart or other things I can add on to.
Great, thank you, Pauline. So look, I must confess I probably have blurred the next two papers together. The first one was actually the proposal, and you had a late paper, and totally accept that Stuart warned me yesterday because he had to seek approval from the Auditor General, and I know that he was pushing hard. Look, this is always a key but relatively small part of the total relationship we govern with the auditors, which is clearly the engagement and the engagement fee. Stu, I think if I got it correct, you're only recommending a fee or asking us for a fee for the coming year that's merely because, along with the sector, we're all trying to anticipate the changes that will come in the subsequent years of your engagement. I wonder if you would just like to quickly speak to your proposal, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So just to address the proposal process, so just a bit of a background. So each 3 years, the Office of the Auditor General reassesses its providers in the local government sector. And it did that during the course of December and January. So we were notified in January of the local authorities that we would be auditing for the forthcoming 3 years. Now, in the vast majority of cases, that remains stable. But as a consequence of impending sort of changes in sort of, shall we say, water service delivery families around the country, there have been a few little changes here and there, but obviously not within the Gisborne district. So we provide that feedback and we drafted up our audit proposal, which then has to be provided to the OAG for their review and consideration prior to it being delivered to the organisation. We've managed to get that back just in time for this meeting, and so it's really just sort of your noting at this point, and then we will discuss it in further detail with management. However, just in terms of the context there. So the last letter of proposal was for 23 to 25 year. It was prepared just after Cyclone Gabrielle, and it's fair to say that the operating tempo of council increased substantially across that 3 year period, which we've worked with management to respond to. We have tried to, we have looked to restrain any further cost increases from council. Obviously, there is a little bit more response to the recovery program that is still needing to be required, because we had expected in the previous letter that essentially the recovery effort would have been largely completed by now. But obviously, there's still a program of capital work to undertake in the next year or three. So that's being taken into consideration. The other element is that with the changes of water delivery coming in the year to 30th of June 28, so from 1 July 27, we have been asked to hold fire on setting fees across the sector in FY28. Now, obviously, you are going to maintain the water services delivery within council, but there's been a new determination come out in regards to the disclosure requirements that council will need to conform with, even as you run it as a sort of separated business unit from 1 July 27. And so we will work with management as the various different parties across the country figure out and understand the disclosure requirements and the reporting and audit requirements associated with Three Waters in the financial year 2028. So we've provided these fees for management to consider. More than happy to take any questions or queries in regards to the approach on that.
Thanks, Stu. Appreciate that. And I think it's fair to say, Pauline, you and I had a very quick discussion on the actual proposal, and I think, can I represent that you see these as reasonable?
Yes.
So we have a positive motion that we approve it, and I think for the sake of the meeting, I'm prepared to move that we approve the fees. As I said, would I have a second? Thank you, Colin. Can we open it up for discussion? Any questions? None.
Is this discussion on the fees?
Yep. No. The proposal, that's what's in front of us. That's what the motion is that you seconded.
Thank you. So Stuart, could you explain a little bit about impairment? And I'm talking to page 24.
Sorry, I think you might be in advance. That's the next paper.
Yeah, sorry, well that's what I was asking.
Yeah, so you're welcome to do that. No worries, Ben. And I suspect that's a good question. It's one that I'll be interested in as well. Do we have any other discussion on the fee letter? There isn't? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carry. Thank you very much. Right, just before you get to ask your question, Colin, go straight to Stu. Pauline, or any comment you want to make about the actual audit plan for the year before I pass over?
No, there's nothing. This way it follows the same things. Yeah.
Thanks, Stu. Floor's yours again.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So you have the audit plan in front of you. Apologies for the version in the paper having a draft sticker all over it. It has been finalised, and the finalisation only required the draft sticker to be removed. So, the final version from our perspective is as per your papers. So this is obviously carrying on for our understanding of the council that we've built up over the years, and our 2025 audit, but also our planning meetings that we've held with management for FY26, and again, the core sort of infrastructure and the recovery effort is a sort of significant component of that. So we will continue to maintain strong understanding of where things are at with your infrastructure, the recovery program, and also your normal day-to-day maintenance and renewal program associated with infrastructure continues to remain a pretty significant part of your organisation. Last year there was a few challenges around sort of the finalisation of the Three Water valuation. As valuations come up, and I consider this year we will work actively with management to sort of get on top of those nice and early. Management's reflected on sort of some of the challenges and delays from last year, and have got a strategy in place to resolve those sort of matters. There's obviously reference to the Water Services Delivery Plan at the bottom of page 4. That is something that won't really tangibly take effect for the current financial year, but it's something that everybody's planning for progressively for the future, and we'll just sort of work with management in regards to any sort of disclosure requirements associated with the Three Water changes that are forthcoming. Associated with your recovery program and also associated with your day-to-day network management are the grants and subsidies that you receive from NZTA and other funding arrangements that you have with central government. They're pretty critical to your operations, and from a financial reporting perspective, very important for us in terms of the drawdown of those funds, the expenditure that is being incurred, both capital and operating, that justify or support the drawdown of those funds, and the recognition of that revenue progressively through the year. The integrity of that process is pretty critical to your financial reporting, and we do place a significant sort of focus on that, and it's very much connected with your capital works program around the recovery in particular. The last thing I sort of really want to touch on is really just in terms of your rates. Your rates processes, they continue on. Historically, we haven't had any concerns or issues about it, but obviously it's a core to your funding, and so we will work with management to assess how that's being reflected into the financial statements. Other things that are on our radar screen. We have had ongoing discussions with Gisborne Holdings Limited, and their progress during the financial year. Some of the things that they are doing, we're conscious of how that anything in that space will impact the council group, and so we will work. We have a planned timeline to complete the audit of GHL in a timely manner to enable consolidation into the group results, but also the normal thing is for when we meet with council either at the end of September or early October, there is reporting by GHL, which we've already audited at that time. And lastly, looking ahead, by 30th of June 27, you will need to adopt a new long-term plan. And so as we get through this calendar year, management will get deeper and deeper into planning the LTP round, and we will work with council on that. So looking forward, I would imagine that we will look to finish, everybody will be looking to finish the annual report in late September, early October, and then pretty much move straight into the long-term plan prior to Christmas and post-Christmas 2026. So I don't want to get us too carried away and too far down the track, but it's obviously something that we need to plan for and be talking about. Happy to take any questions or queries from any members of the committee in relation to the plan or anything about our audit approach or things that you think we haven't necessarily covered and would like to talk about.
Very good. Colin, you had a question on impairment, page 24.
Thank you. So page 24, you're page 6, I think, Stuart. The second bullet point is to do with impairment of our assets, and I'm speaking particularly to roading here, where the replacement cost or fixing cost is greater than depreciation. Does that mean that the cost over and above is automatically capitalised? How do you work that out?
So the level of impairment on your network has obviously been progressively diminishing as you carried out work or understood your assets more since the cyclone. In terms of the impairment, often elements of your roading network that were damaged were being carried at a depreciated replacement cost. So they weren't brand new in most cases. They were not brand new assets, and they were partially through their useful life when they were damaged or destroyed by the cyclone, by flooding events or slips. And so, if you will spend probably more on actually fixing those assets, or you have been spending more in most cases on fixing those assets than what they were carried at in the books. However, what you are building is a brand new asset, and often they have been built to a more modern design that will theoretically be stronger and more resilient to any future weather events. So you book the value of the new replacement cost into your books when that occurs, and when the next valuation comes through, that will sort of all be washed up as well, in terms of ensuring that the appropriate value for those assets, those new assets and the old assets that still remain, exist within your financial records.
So perhaps just to complete Colin's question, so where does impairment fit in that, Stu?
Well, so you continue to, when you get your revaluations done of your roading network, you continue to maintain a schedule of parts of your roading network that have not been fully reconstructed since the event. And so they are valued at those impairments, so those unfixed pieces of your roading network. There's an identified value within the pre-existing valuation for those elements, and then that is removed from to reflect the impairment. They are removed from the roading network impairment. Valuation. So let's say, I can't remember the figure off the top. Let's say there's still $20 million of depreciated replacement cost impairment that is being accounted for. The figure might be higher. You reduce the valuation of your network by that number. And then as you can reconstruct that during the course of the year, that piece of impairment associated with a particular asset gets removed, and hence the overall value of the network goes up.
Colin, is that helpful?
Just a question around the new valuation of that asset. Is it based around the actual cost of improvement, or is it some new person assesses its value?
The valuation basically takes into consideration current market costs for if you were to replace the network. So when you're doing a lot of construction at the present time, those insights from current market data are fed into the latest valuation exercise to support the new replacement costs that are applied within the valuation. So if you're finding you're getting some really great pricing as part of your construction work, then theoretically the value of your whole network will actually fall. But if the prices continue to increase, then theoretically the value of the entire network will increase with that, because it reflects the replacement cost of the network.
Thank you, Stuart. So traffic management increases the cost.
traffic management is an element associated with reconstruction, is an element of the cost that is built into the valuer's consideration. You know, they always have sort of baseline costs, and then they have professional services and other costs associated with construction as they sort of add all the pieces up to get the replacement cost for the network.
Thank you. Any other questions, Stu? Yeah, Larry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stuart. I was just going to ask a question. It's a pretty generic one, but being an auditor, you would see a lot of consequences around the country and councils. Is a 10-year plan still fit for purpose in our modern environment? We've just gone through and had a 3-year plan. We've got our 30-year infrastructure strategies and all our other future-focused monitoring. But we look at the cost of a 10-year plan and the consequences of weather events and other different economic environments that we're facing at the moment, and how they impact on that, and the amount of work that it costs a council to do. Is it still, fit for purpose, in your opinion?
It's a slight policy / political question, which is slightly dangerous to answer. I mean, look, you need to continue to plan for your infrastructure assets, or your entire council, over a period longer than 3 years, because you do need to look beyond that 3 years. It continues to be helpful that is a 3-year sort of planning cycle, and that anything that you do when you're looking out 10 or 30 years, you are refreshing at least once every 3 years. But I will accept that with a changing environment, years 4 to 10, there's a high risk of things changing, but you need to know what's coming around the corner. You need to be able to forecast the extent of your infrastructural renewal program. You need to be able to forecast where your debt's going to be. And this forthcoming planning round will be particularly interesting, because possibly more so in other councils where water assets are being totally removed from the structure of the organisation. The implications around Three Waters and the planning for that will continue to be an absolute centre of focus. So I haven't directly answered your question because of its slight sort of policy legislative sort of bent to it, but planning out beyond 3 years, I believe, is still pretty critical to council.
Larry, I do have a strong view. I'm prepared to tell you that, but I'll tell you that over smoke.
Hi Stuart, it's the head speaking. I'm on page 25. Something that caught my eye was the second to last bullet point under planned audit approach, where you note certain rate-paying groups represent a higher collection risk. We will examine any provision for doubtful rate debtors to consider whether it is appropriate in the circumstances. Can you talk a little bit more about that to make me understand that better?
Well, I mean, as a council, and as a economy at the present time, it's fair to say across the country we have seen increases in rates debtors books. So people are not necessarily able to pay their rates in as timely a manner as they used to. In the Gisborne district, obviously, there's a lot of Māori-owned land, so multi-title, and so that generates some complexities, but council are usually very on the front foot in managing that effectively. But when all councils, we are observing the economic impact of rates collectability. And so, it is something, obviously you have certain legal rights in regards to the recovery of rates. Some councils will action those faster and harder than others, because it's completely your determination as to how you manage that. We're just flagging that in the current environment, rates can be harder to collect.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Rob?
Yeah, basically, page 4 of your report, which is page 22 now, just around the risk that useful assumptions used for valuations, and I'm talking about our roading network there. We're currently in a position where maintaining our current network is getting harder and harder to do, and I can't see anything changing in the years going forward. So if the state of that network is going to keep being reduced, our valuations are going to be reduced, and I'm just sort of looking at that as a big part of our value network that we then can work down the line to money we can actually borrow. So that seems to be quite a risk to me going forward, is the actual state of our network and the ability to maintain it. Just by you know, the cost of something doesn't necessarily make the true value of it.
It's a statement rather than a question.
Well,
I agree.
Statement, but it's just something that does worry me going forward. We've got a valuation of all our assets. We are in a position where we are struggling, and we are going to struggle to maintain them going forward.
I think, Rob, that's a good point again to pick up, particularly with our valuers, but secondly with Stuart through the audit process, because if there is a permanent diminution, I would argue that there is some sense of impairment. I don't know what you're doing here, but if you like some of my rural colleagues, we're posting bridges, not putting trucks across them because we can't afford to replace them. You've got to argue the replacement cost is definitely the replacement cost. But when you've got no intention, you've got something of quite an impaired asset. So, Stuart, I don't know whether can you perhaps indicate the strength of the amount of impairment work you would reflect on that basis in the audit?
When we are discussing matters with the valuers and also with your council's own team responsible for the network, we do have discussions around what I would call optimisation. So where elements of the network might be a 2-lane bridge at the present time, but may be reduced in the future, where there are weight limits on bridges that will never necessarily be corrected, where there are roads that will not necessarily be continued at the level of service that they have historically been. And so from my perspective, it's pretty important that the valuers understand the status and the age of and the condition of those assets, so they can be captured in the valuation. Obviously, council does not it's not a simple decision to sort of say, okay, well, we're not going to support that road any further. Obviously, that's something that you undertake after sort of significant community consultation. But from a network perspective, we are always seeking to understand sort of age and stage of roads and other assets across the community.
Thank you. Rhonda.
I was interested on the bottom of page 31, that's in the black box, it goes 150 plus countries, all using EY Helix GL Analyzer. I suppose I was interested to understand what platforms is EY using in relation to this piece of work, and what is Helix?
Well, Helix is we have a variety of different technology platforms that we support to run our various different data analytics. So, I mean, the modern technologies allowed us to essentially obtain 100% of general ledger transaction data to be able to maintain that insight to your ledger and your financial information, and to be able to run the queries that we do. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to sort of run off the stream of various different sort of technology platforms and guarantee that I'm going to get them 100% right at this point. So.
Just a supplementary, given that there's 850 billion plus data processed annually, has there been any attacks in terms of this particular platform that EY uses, and what's the risk there?
So we maintain the data in relation to our audits in a very much a controlled data centre space. We comply with the Office of the Auditor General's expectations in regards to data management. EY, as any organisation, receives attacks in regards to cyber security risk, but I am not aware of any ledger data, transactional data maintained by any New Zealand audit client that has been lost or has been obtained by an external party. We have not had any. Every organisation is threatened by cyber risk, but we have not had any loss events, and we maintain the standards that the Auditor General expects of us in that space.
Mihi, thank you very much.
Good as your last battle, aren't you? That's right. Look, just final question here. Looking down your way, Pauline, on page 35 of their agenda, Stewie's got the broad outline. Obviously, he's agreed with it, but you're comfortable that the deadlines, delivery, our own internal processes, project management, quality control over what we deliver, etc., is all in hand?
Yes, we did that for the forecast to be able to deliver that. Notwithstanding any other significant changes or anything with regards to anything else, but at this time.
You're right, there's always significant changes and contingencies we have to be worried about. Okay, no, that's really important though, that you are comfortable that we have got our processes right so that we can align those with Stuart and obviously look at the appropriate sign-off time, which is useful. That's great. Okay. At that time, you've got another question, Con?
Another question, if I could. Thank you, Chair. Page 27, your page 9, it's got to do with expenditure procurement in relation to expenses like travel, training, consultancy fees. Now, I think our policy is that a single councillor signs off the expenses each month on credit cards and things. Is that sufficient, or should all councillors be have an eye on what that expenditure is?
No, I mean, I think the processes council has in place are sort of appropriate. I mean, we wouldn't normally expect to see the costs of normal day-to-day sort of going around the business of council to be circulated around a broader audience. I think there are appropriate delegated authorities in place, and those procedures are carried out. There might be the occasional special circumstance where something is, in terms of someone's intended expense as representative of council, may be considered by the broader audience, but I think people have got a good gauge on that. Historically, at some councils I've sort of seen where there has been a planned overseas trip to a sister city or something like that. Something like that might receive some sort of pre-approval or pre-consideration by a broader audience, but day-to-day costs of going about your business as councillors would just be through your normal processes.
Thanks, Phil. Right. I think we're there. Thank you, Ria. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you very much. John Paul, thank you for that and your time this morning. I think that's got us to the end of your stuff too. If you are keen to stay online, you're welcome to observe the rest. Otherwise, we'll let you folk get on with your day. I appreciate you coming in online. Great. Thank you for the call.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for your time, everybody. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today. I certainly will intend on attending a few meetings during the course of the year. But appreciate the ability to be able to beam in. Chair, if you're okay, I'll stick around till 11 o'clock. I've got something else at 11, but see how you go over the course of that time. I'll probably drop out before public excluded, though.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Stu. Appreciate it, John Paul. Welcome again, and thank you for your engagement. We could move to the strategic risk management paper. Daniel, I presume I'll look straight to you for this one. Thank you. It's a good paper.
Thanks. Glad we're ahead of schedule. I'll take this report as read It's sort of in two parts. I've got the residual risk updates, and then I've introduced a more elaborate look into risk appetite and work that we've been doing management level to actually do an uplift in advance of doing asset management plans, activity management plans and stuff. The light part here is the residual risk updates, which is reflective of there are no material changes since our last report in December on our control environment. So that remains the same. That's not to say there aren't current watch points and things progressing. So within the financial strategic risk, we are advancing on the credit rating. Tenders have gone out. So that's progressing so we can look at increasing debt limits. For business continuity, we've scheduled in, I think there's 38 business impact assessments over a 2-week period in April for, which looks at our service delivery and our redundancies and capacity there. So we're having that review done in April, and hopefully that will give us more insight into that strategic risk, and we can do reviews based on that. And in terms of our asset management strategic risk, at the last committee, I forget where it came from, but was asked to split apart the different updates by the key asset categories, which we've done, which is roading, like the stop banks, as well as water. So I've separated those out through tables because while we have an overall residual risk of moderate for asset, it does differ in how you look at it and where we go. So the roading is what's carrying at a major. And this report doesn't include updates since this latest weather event. And Tim may want to provide a verbal to that later, but given that we're still in the transition to recovery period, it's a bit too soon for me to elaborate further on that. And in terms of the other residual risk, everything's sort of progressing as normal. There's no material updates to treatment activities going on. And I'm hoping for recovery, Gabrielle recovery specifically in June. We can have a more thorough discussion on what recovery means, risk issues and whatnot, but we've got to have time to process where we're at currently. So wait and see for June. That's what I'm looking forward to. Everything else is business as usual, but happy to take any questions on them. So I'll move to the appetite uplift. It features more prominently in the report. I'm going to emphasize, from my point of view, it's a minor uplift update. We already have in our framework risk categories and appetite statements based around an overall appetite of moderate. That hasn't shifted. What I've done is add more clarity. More clarity allows more precision in doing risk assessments. And so appetite, which is different from residual risk. Residual risk is based on our controlled environment. Our appetite's more reflective of our day-to-day pulse check, where things are at. It's about the trade-offs that we make in real time, or maybe slightly longer time. And so this reflects that better. And the appetite statements are also consequence statements, which feature in the likelihood of consequence table. So it does influence residual risk in a way. These appetite categories, which we've always had, are the undercurrents to all the risks. And so I've shared a different layer of analysis because of that. I'm going to continue to do that. And so that's on page 47. And really what I've done is make consistent what extreme means, so what glaring red means, and that's where we're at intolerability. Major, that's stress points, that's beyond our BAU, that's where we're uncomfortable, and moderate's kind of reflecting our BAU stress. And moderate, generally speaking, does not mean everything's perfect and glowing. We make trade-offs every day. It's just within what's expected. Happy to take more questions on that, and I think probably there'll be more questions on clarity about the distinctions between what residual risk is and risk appetite, and more than happy to go into that further. I'll leave that there for now and just open to questions.
Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So it's a great update on the position we're in. You're stating, and I think in effect, if I was to look at, hold it, sorry, I've got it right here. Obviously, page 45, the table, we've got a summary of the big risk, strategic risk, keeping an eye on, and certainly those top three in the major category the residual risk are where we are feeling, I think your words quite rightly, were uncomfortable.
Can I add to this three? The point that I just forgot to make for the residual risks for those top three, we're at major, but these are based on longer term things and progresses. It's not immediate things. These are probably here to stay for a little while, far more structural things, and they're looking at the forward environment, particularly the natural environment and financial sphere. It's not, it's not an immediate change to the control environment.
Okay, great, thank you. So we're open to questions, Daniel. Appreciate that, man. Questions?
I was just looking through and seeing the roading, and my concern is the connectivity. Recently we're now being really exposed, and we're a major, but our connectivity is actually the highest risk that we have for this region at this particular point, with the road closures up the coast and the gorge being as it is at the moment, and we're so vulnerable. And then on page 52, I think it is, it plays it down a bit on that sentence. So I'd just like to know where we stand with that, because to me, I think connectivity is almost a separate issue. We've got roading, and I know most of the connectivity is to do with Whakapatahi, but it's still the effect on this region is huge. So I just like to have a bit of a discussion on that, please.
Through the chair, I'm going to pass that to Tim, but just for context, time of writing this report, I was sitting at the welfare desk in civil defense. It was too soon for me to write any more elaboration in this report.
In this respect, you're quite right. I think you are referring to page 52, and I think the important point that I would read into this, Larry, I think it supports your point of view, is, Dan, you called this an emerging pressure.
Yeah.
So I think this is a point that the day-to-day stressors aren't necessarily that we have a lack of connectivity, but it's actually saying an emerging pressure is connectivity more generally, and I think you made a really good point. It's as much the state highways as anything else. But Tim, you've got a... Oh, sorry, Nadine.
And just to frame it as well, is that that's more about the vulnerabilities, right? And these are around the controlled risks, so it's around how do we account for the vulnerabilities in a space where we know this is the area that we can actually control. We can't control the weather, what it's going to do, but we can acknowledge that it is a major vulnerability.
I'll speak to roads in general and connectivity risks. It features to the right-hand side of the heat map on page 46. So in terms of risk, if you consider a Venn diagram, roads, that is our most vulnerable asset class in this present reading. That's likely to shift quickly. It also overlaps with financial headroom and natural environment, which also affects our road and corridor, so those risks are there. I guess the paper covers the local roads, not the state highway, which you might be mentioning on State Highway 2. But for our local roads as well, connectivity can be an issue, and the connectivity of the state highway is probably outside the grounds of this discussion, but that's a big concern for the region. I'd agree with that.
I wonder if it's helpful, and this is where the shared statements or Dan's comments are really useful here, Larry. If we would go to page 58, we do have the consequence tables. The statement that you're saying, Dan, around excellent performance and service delivery, amplify the position that we have previously agreed is satisfactory, we feel comfortable, we feel we can manage the future uncertainties. We have the statement that generally our assets, not state highways, but let's just reflect on that. Periodic service disruptions occur but are anticipated, managed and within agreed tolerances. So that's essentially saying we know we're going to have disruptions, we get ourselves back up and running pretty quick. What I'm reading into it is actually the challenge for us is that being able to that level of preparation is threatened by ongoing externalities, which, to go back to your point, we can't control. So in effect, we are at risk. It's not a blame thing, it's actually just the reality of the position we're in. We're repeated service disruptions and customer experience and increasing operational risk, active prioritisation and intervention required. In other words, it's getting much harder to manage, and the impact on our community is going to be greater, which is a long way coming back to your point. Connectivity is a real problem, correct? But it does say that if, and this is the issue for us as a risk committee, and indeed what we might recommend for council, if we find we are increasingly heading towards major or even extreme, which is worse, is there anything we can do about it, Tom?
It actually was covered off slightly with Councillor Alder's earlier discussion about how we look at deterioration of the network financially as well. Underlying our response to the recent weather events, which tend to swell what the numbers you look at, along an increasing reduction in our ability of our network to respond slowly over time, and that's been notable in the last couple of decades. It's something we've brought to the Transport Committee last year. The natural tendency on this curve, if nothing changes, is to move to the right. So that table that you've pointed out, I think on page 58, the natural tendency we've been heading is towards the right, which is more reactive management. Reactive management has, in recent years, been not encouraged, but in effect funded, because emergency works provisions have been made available to regions to act, so you can manage your networks more reactively. The message now is that will soon be cut off, but you're left with a network which is not as resilient as you would like it to be to manage in that on the more left-hand side of that equation. So yeah, that is a enduring issue which requires fundamental changes in how we manage our network. Requires big decisions about how we treat levels of service, and what connectivity is really important, what connectivity is less important. So those are very relevant questions to us. This is sits at the higher risk, largest influence for council side of the risk diagram, and it's not going to move any way quickly. That's the other answer I'd have.
We've had the recent events, obviously. What sort of, sorry, you say there are good, I'll go back to your big questions, there are some big questions, and I'm, of course, give a impatient chair, when are they going to be answered, or how are they going to be answered? One assumes that this is something that we talk about a lot with NZTA, probably at least one or two ministers. Is this the sort of thing that is being raised with them now? When do the answers come?
Directed me as well.
Yeah, it is, Tim. Yeah. It might even be read. You've talked with Minister Mitchell. I guess I'm just trying to think through. How do we get to those questions in a position of, if the management of these assets is changing from proactive to reactive, or how do we turn it? Where's the forum? Where's the venue? When is this going to be the sorts of questions we have to try and work through as a council?
So today we have the ILM, which sort of sets the precedence of our investment proposal. So that's sort of the statutory way. And there's also other means which are less formal, more direct sort of lobbying means. And we've seen success around the country in different formats with the agency. It's not, but I think you have to speak as a region really clearly and aligned with each other when asking these questions. I would also say that this is not unique to our area, but the effect it has on us is magnified. We have very long connective arms to our economic partners in our regions next to us, which are more affected by the environment, our largest risk item pretty much, than other regions. So having that understood at governmental level is critical. The policy statements that are put out by the the ministries and a agency don't necessarily speak to that issue. They are speaking to when needs arise through other drivers. Resilience is in the mix, but it's not at the top. We need a narrative maybe unique to our area to try and lobby collectively on the agency. Yeah.
And Bruce, we have extensively in the last 2 months since we've seen what's happening. We've been, Chris Bishop committed to meeting up and talking about resilience going north, contacted Simon Bridges as well as the chair of NZTA, and it's true what Tim says, if we are not going to go at it as a region, they would just look at us and say difficult to do business with. So as a region, a regional approach is what we are aiming for, and that needs to happen before June, I would say. Get all of those together and have those discussions. They're well aware, and we've been in the media about that quite a bit, but pinning politicians down and getting those commitments or working with is going to take quite some time. Are we on to them?
Look, I shouldn't doubt that, Red. And by the way, this is not Tim a blame thing or a pressure thing. It's just trying to understand the value of Larry and your analysis, Dan, which is that we are, to use the phraseology, we're out of appetite. And one of the most critical things that you do when you're out of appetite, clearly as a government, is actually say, what do we do about it? Or what can we do about it? And even, is there anything we can do about it? And so we're somewhere between, is there anything we can do about it and what can we do about it? And I'm hearing the point about the combined lobbying of the minister. I hear your point about actually trying to get resilience, which is really proactivity, back into our program rather than reactivity. So you've said June. I'm not going to hold you to that yet. So June is ideal, I presume, because we're going into an election cycle when they won't be talking much to anything. And thirdly, I presume the big questions we're talking about, how do we put this in as really going to come to play long term?
Yeah, potentially, and I just add to the conversation. So if we're talking about cross-regional boundaries, the gorgeous line in our jurisdiction, it's an all-risk so conversations are happening, particularly with the NZTA relationship director level around what is the best outcome that we can have for our region. And are we better to be advocating on this side and taking the recovery kind of leadership on this end, because we significantly impacted that TT credit card transactions showed a 30% decline in weather effects, and it's really affecting our transportation, etc. So there's other things that we can do operationally around how we can try and encourage the agencies. I think the issue that they're grappling with is lack of funding, other regions' priority along our line, and actually is there a viable alternative to what we've currently got with our landscape? So those are some challenges.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. And the only other thing I just wanted to, and you reflected on this, Tim, is that this risk around connectivity, Larry, just doesn't sit in isolation. You've hinted that actually it's also affecting probably our appetite around our finances. And that is creating pressure where also we've got to acknowledge that we are, while we've got the immediate controls in place, then again the trend here is potentially pushing us away from moderate into where our headroom becomes constrained, etc., etc. So it is a position that we need to, as a committee, monitor. So Dan, thank you for putting it in there, and appreciate that you were probably doing your day job around welfare when you wrote this in here. I think this is something, Larry, thank you for your question, that we just need, we need to keep our eye on. We actually did a deep dive, which is actually quite good. So I think we keep our eye on this as we go into it. So thank you for that advice. Larry, you asked the question. Was there anything else you wanted to say, or is that okay? Cool.
Thank you, Chair. First, a disclaimer, I'm commenting only from my own opinion and from my experiences within the community and people that I've spoken to. My first question is on page 45. It's got to do with treaty commitments and that being a major risk. I've looked down at the tiered consequence statement for page 58, trying to find a corresponding descriptive for how we come by the statement for treaty commitments. And I'm guessing it's under stakeholders, but it's not very clear how we define that we are in a bad place in this treaty commitments area. Again, personal experience and personal comment that I've had recently was too much hooey. Could you care to comment on how we come by that major?
It is just a reference.
No,
Eugene there, thank you, and I'll open the floor for you, please, Eugene.
Kia ora tātou, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Alder. We are currently classed as a major because against our statutory responsibilities, we are currently confronted with the consistent challenge of an endorsed pathway in a position against a lot of our statutory and legislative functions. This relates to more broadly aspects like our TRMP review, where we were required through national policy statements, for example, to ensure that we have partnered in the best way, in the most appropriate way possible to ensure that tangata whenua can be in a position to contribute to those documents and the likes. How that manifests is in the absence of clear, defined, structured governor-to-governor relationships in order to be able to set clear, endorsed directions that both us as operational staff for council and iwi entity operational staff are able to just follow. It makes it really, really tricky for us to confidently secure that endorsement and that mandate against, like I said, the suite of legislative requirements in which we are required to do so. And that does become a risk for us. It's currently categorised at major simply because two things is we wanted as council to, at the time this strategic risk was adopted, we wanted to as council highlight how seriously we were taking our responsibilities as treaty partners, and we wanted to send that message to our iwi and hapu relationships. The other component to that is to create a space where at a governance table we are actually taking it seriously, and that the required change within the institution regarding our processes and ways of working is considered and therefore decided on by yourself as governors, and then also delivered from us as operational staff.
Thank you, Eugene.
Supplementary. Could we perhaps see a tiered consequence statement for this specific area, which would help me understand how we're progressing through it? Just a comment. My second question is page 48, and it has to do with our reputational status being moderate. And then on page 60 is the descriptive for that. And again, speaking from my own experience and reading the moderate and the major statements, I would have to say we are more major than moderate. It's not often I get a positive feedback, unfortunately, for council's performance in many areas. Our newspaper is not performing as well as it used to when it comes to reporting on council activities. So yeah, again, how do we come by that being moderate, not a major, is a question.
I'll see you, Dan.
Yeah, I'll take those in two parts through the chair. The first part being the treaty commitments residual risk, which is based on our risk bow tie assessment that was done a couple of years ago. And the treatments that were identified then are in progress. They are being actively promoted. There's been advancement. We do have some partners at the table for the long-term planning phase, which Gene, if he wants to speak to more directly, can. And then as well as embedding our treaty commitments, our relationship agreements into our activity management planning, which goes into our LTP cycle. That's underway, but those controls aren't complete yet. So we still sit at major, and we are due to refresh that risk and relook at it, because as you remember a few years ago, we put a tentative timeline on it, I guess, which was 2 to 3 years, because we're doing it based on our inward facing view. That is separate from our appetite statements, consequence statements, which is a different layer of analysis, which is, I guess, brought into that external relationships or stakeholder relationships, which is a new category brought in, and that's primarily around central government, community at large, and our treaty parties. And why we've done that and externally driven change is because reputational risk category, which isn't a strategic risk, it's a risk category, so it's an undercurrent through a lot of different risks, is that the reputation became a catch-all. And when doing risk assessments, it became an apparent theme across every single one, I'd say, that stakeholder relationships and external drivers were being lumped into reputation and was square peg, round hole scenario. So we've brought those out. I don't know if I've answered the question explicitly, but it's kind of a apples and oranges comparison. The reputational appetite is our, not a strategic risk. There's no risk assessment on that. That is our, where we sit today. I haven't reassessed that in recent days, but no conversations in house have suggested it would be above moderate, but I'm looking for information on that.
Through Chair, just to explain, so like on page 60, how did you arrive at those? What are you willing to accept as that moderate, and where do you see that assessment? So on page 60 for the reputation, it said yes, there will be routine sort of things that you may have in the media. What extreme is it? But to go to the extreme element is that there's widespread loss of trust. And even some of the elements is that within the media, within kind of a month, extended periods of time, as opposed to kind of the routine. So that's kind of where that was, and that's how they assessed your, at that particular time, that risk appetite. What are the ranges would you consider acceptable to not? And they then assess on what is the situation that we're currently seeing, and so that's the part of how you usually assess where does it sit within all those elements.
So, supplementary question, what part do councillors play, and are you, in a sense, marking your own exam papers? I mean, at what point do we come in and contribute here?
Contribute to what?
Into the settings.
The overall assessment. I mean, look, we do that through our periodic deep dives. So that's where we have our chance. Jeremy, you've got a question?
Yes, I'd like to continue on this conversation, because I also believe our reputational setting probably should be at moderate. I think we're moving towards at major and shift, but that we are shifting towards moderate. Some of what was in the briefing to incoming councillors, some of what was in the engagement and Māori partnership section and in the customer service, there were wordings there that show actually we're major and we are putting into place a recovery effort. And I think that recovery effort is critical. I mean, I talk of the move to have that major stakeholders section as well, but we, the community at large, we've got a lot of work to do on our reputation, I believe, and it is happening. And I mean, on the campaign trail, we all felt that. It came to us loud and clear, and it really, and it's been really encouraging to me coming onto the council, the strong desire, not only around this council table, but from council staff to really work hard in this area. And I think it would really acknowledge that effort if we were major there, and we really were putting in a big effort around our engagement, our communications to be moving clearly to moderate and then to minor, because that's so important for what we're doing. And I think around that engagement and communications, we had a discussion at a recent meeting around how we're doing that. I think that we've got a range of really key skills around this council table that could support that, and I think we should be having a workshop on it in the near future.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's a very interesting view, and this is important we have the discussion as you've raised it, Jeremy, because I think, Dan, it would be important that you reflect on this, given it is really the role of governors to determine ultimately the final laptop period.
Just following on from what Jeremy said, I can't remember. When was the last time? Remember, we go around the room and put our little stickers on and do. So it is probably as we move into the 10-year plan again, where as a group we would then go and take every councillor's personal risk and try and get a group risk together. So that's a workshop which I hope is I can't remember when was the last time we did it.
It kind of
couple of years ago?
Yeah, it sets the kind of
Threshold.
threshold for determining when we do the assessment around where we think we're tracking, saying this is what moderate looks like.
But also, didn't we do a workshop where all of us decided then how, Dan, how important, because we do want to get a group view, and that was, I remember that we all had our little stickers, and that could then quantify where we saw each of our individual risk thresholds or appetites, and then form a group appetite at the end. So what Jeremy is saying, it's time for us now that we're a new council to again take a look at what we see where and how we get that risk appetite, because it was a very helpful workshop as well.
Through the chair, our last appetite workshops were held not long after Cyclone Gabriel during that cycle, because they hadn't been done for a few years prior to that. And it's a natural time to do it when aligned with creating priorities. In the upcoming phase, it'd be important to do that. I can't change our appetite. By precedent's been historically moderate, so the descriptions just reflect that. It's up to councillors to decide what our appetite is. I'm reporting on our position against that. And so if our appetite's lower, a workshop environment would be good for that. For right now, though, the scheduling is messy, so I'll work behind the scenes to determine if that's feasible, if so, and when, and what takes shape.
I think you've had read. I think it's a good view. So
Time if we've done it up.
No stress here, Dan, because I don't think we're attacking. We're not attacking.
No, not at all.
We're just saying that I agree with you, Riet, that actually I'm finding with my other committees, it is a good time now to be starting to think about a workshop. We previously had Harrison and to lead a relatively short workshop around this.
Because we've got new voices around the table as well.
It would be a good time with the new council for us to do that. So yes, let's work behind the scenes on that one, Dan, and see if that's possible. It's the need to do it.
Through the chair, this work, what's in here, is foundational to that, because to have a successful workshop, do have to have the chessboard in place for us to be able to, and by us, I mean this body, to be able to figure out where our appetite is. So it sets the framework for that. The framework needs to be updated because of that, so I'm working on that at the moment. Yeah, that's exactly where I want to position this.
I think you're working the framework. We've had a good discussion, which includes risk appetite, and I think that's the key thing we do. Larry, you've got a...
Yeah, just one thing, and I'll just on a positive note, I'd like to congratulate our CE and staff on our 11.2% turnover that we've had, which is probably the lowest that I've ever seen. It was 13 last time, and that's even lower now. And there's got to be some correlation between staff turnover and our reputational risk. It's if the place is a happy environment to work in, surely that must reflect out in the community as well. So I just want to make that statement, because I hear a lot of negative stuff about the council myself. So anyway.
Well, and that also then reflects the value of a workshop. we all have a different perspective on where things are at, and it would be good to do that. Jean, I'm conscious you've got your hand up. Sorry, mate, I hadn't realised that. You want to contribute, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just supplementary to Daniel's summary of the treatment and control landscape. I just wanted to add that this year we have already signalled to iwi leaders that we would like them to come together with councillors in terms of our long-term plan, strategic direction setting and investment and prioritisation phases as well, and to support that control and that approaches. We've also adopted a revised version of activity and asset management planning templates where our treaty considerations for the first time are considered more broadly across the business. And so as Daniel mentioned, 3 years ago or post-Gabrielle, when the strategic risk was adopted, we did indicate that it would be a long tail because it does take a cycle of triennium within an institution like ours in order to be able to embed some of these actions that we have indicated that we would see a reduction of the risk threshold that we currently sit at. And I just wanted to highlight that for our members in this committee. Kia ora.
Thanks, Jean. Appreciate your contribution. That's fine. Could I move to the resolution, please, which is that we note the content. Always seems a bit underwhelming, but it is. We will note, and I do appreciate the conversation this has generated, Dan. It's great. I'm going to move that. Please. Thank you, Red. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Thank you very much. Righty. Health and safety, David.
I was like,
you want to be working an hour. You want to be working, okay. I sense a coup going on there. We take a break. What is it's 1:15? We'll be back at 1:30. So before, thank you, mate. I understand. I got informed when I was getting ready for the meeting that David is. I used the word retire. I think you said whatever the right one is. Anyway, you're moving on to better pastures, and David, you've been one of the solid pieces of health and safety that people that I've seen around this country, and I work with a few of them. And you've blessed Gisborne with great work. I know we keep reviewing it. We hopefully asked you some hard questions, but you have been providing continual support for this risk committee in terms of considering health and safety risk. And I can see that you're well respected within this council. And as you leave, that will be a great loss for not just your colleagues, but particularly for this committee. So, in anticipation of your paper, and indeed what we're going to do in PX, thank you for all your work, and I do wish you well for the future.
Thank you, through the chair. I acknowledge those kind words, and it's been a pleasure to work with everybody here, and I will certainly miss everything and everyone in this organisation. Yeah, I'm not sure if I made the right call, but never mind. I appreciate the words, and I'll start off with my report. So, take it the report has been read. December and January historically have been pretty quiet due to the festive period while the contractor's away. However, the unfortunate weather events and the CD involvement has taken a lot of time and effort to get on top of. Contractor management, as I've said from day one in governance level, is one of our critical risks, and it's crucial that we maintain that contractor management. WorkSafe, you'll see from the paper, made it pretty clear that even in weather events, post-weather events, health and safety requirements, duties do not change, which gives us a bit of a dilemma when we've got weather events that give a whole increased risk for contractors working in that recovery area, including fatigue, long hours, etc., etc. So that's a critical one for us to keep maintaining. The total recordable incident frequency rate, which is a lag indicator, is still maintained at 1, which is really encouraging, meaning a lot of our workers don't go to doctors, don't have time off, which is good and encouraging. We're making steady progress on a recently developed 3-year health and safety plan arising from the impact audit last year. and also alluded to the Health and Safety Amendment Bill, which is going through Parliament at the moment. I consider it will have minimal effect on us. We've always been focused on the critical risks. We will continue to focus on our critical risks. No change there, but I will be monitoring the bill closely going on from here. And I think it's fair to say that the report received mixed feedbacks from the professional health and safety groups I'm party to. So that's in a nutshell. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. As always, a very thorough report. If I do have questions for David on his paper. Go for it, Larry.
Yeah, just on page 60, or 70, sorry, you've got that graph there, and I know it's no treatment, but December was quite a big spike. What has caused that?
It's a good question. I have information. That's a good question. To hand, but I can certainly find it quickly.
Sorry, remind me, Larry, which graph you're
On page 70, yeah, just the graph where it's got
80 for some reason.
There's no treatment, but it's the largest spike of the year, pretty much. And I know it's probably not major, but just interested to know why there must have been something to cause that.
Yeah, I can't really answer that. That's just like when you look at the non-treatment injuries, we do get quite a lot of injuries, little slips, trips and falls throughout the course of the year. You'll see in February on, it was around about the similar amount of injury. Yeah. I think the positive thing is that we're getting these reported, which is good. Yeah. There are no treatments, there's no medical, no doctor's treatment. I just believe it's good reporting and they're minor injuries, slip, trips and falls, near misses, etc., etc.
We tend to have a lot more outdoor work crank up that time of year as well. Right. So our contract environment's quite busy. Yeah. We did experience one of our highest contracting periods over that period as well. I think that might account for probably that spike. I think I wouldn't put money on it as such. Dave will dig into the detail, but just I just know that we had increased outdoor activity over that time as well.
Yeah, and I can share with you after this. I'll just send you the detail of that, so you can just see what kind of incidents happened at that time. But it's nothing there that would surprise me or scare me or worry me. Yeah, pretty low level incidents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Colin.
Chair, thank you for the report, David, and I'm happy to move it. Two questions, one on large woody debris and work-safe site visits. Two only, would you expect more than that for a big job like woody debris removal?
What page on?
Sorry, page 67. 67. Large woody debris, 2 visits, 1 in February, 1 in March. I just wonder how, is there involvement normally more than that, or is it what we expect?
It's the top box, David, on 67. Where that will be, what, February, March 2025.
How do you know it's woody debris?
Oh, the work-safe visits? The ones, yep.
Yes, that's right.
Oh yeah, I can't really comment on WorkSafe. Having worked there, I know that one of their key focus areas is on contractor management and the forestry environment. So I'm quite surprised that there haven't been that many WorkSafe visits across the thing. I often catch up with my colleagues at WorkSafe here in Gisborne, and they have been through a heap of changes and rationalisation within the organisation. And I do believe they haven't got a forestry expert here based in Gisborne, so that could be one of the reasons. There's no rhyme or reason. I think they should be out more personally, but I can see from that they're not.
My next question was on page 71, and it relates to incidences. And just obviously where there's a lot of public involvement, I understand there's a lot of interaction and problems. But the Wainaki restoration seems to be quite high, with a number of people involved. Is that something that we should be alerted to? 15 incidences altogether.
Yeah, over the year. Yep. Again, through the chair, The incidents, those that have been reported, we've had quite a lot of criminal incidents at Wainaki with gates being opened up, allowing access to hunters. There was quite a big increase in those, so that's the majority of those in the pink are down to those break-ins through padlocks up at the Wainaki Restoration Area. The incidents, because of the nature of their work, they're actually doing a lot of tramping, walking. There's been a lot of 6 trips, slips and falls over a year, and I think that is pretty synonymous with the actual work they're actually doing in all weathers. No concern, they're fully reported, fully investigated. There's nothing been serious there that I've come across in relation to those.
I think that, if I may through the chair, the positive part about this is that the team are actively using our system to record and at least we're getting that information through and encouraging managers to continue to do the same.
Does that answer the question, Colin?
Thank you. Yes. I do have another question, but it's probably more public excluded, so I'll leave it to him.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for David? Right.
I'm happy to move this paper.
I think I've got that, but I'll take you as seconding that. Thanks, Riette. So on that basis, the motion is that we receive David's report. And I think it's important actually that we just note with our thanks to David and his report.
Thank you very much. No, it's been emotional.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, it's carried. We move then to the procedural motion, which is to move into excluded, which I will move.
I'll second.
And that gets me to the end of the meeting.
We're out.
Well done. Thank you again, Nadine, for a great team and a very okay, folks, that's it for today for me.
We'll be back at 1 o'clock.